Good evening to you wherever you're watching us from, and welcome to a Farmers Media right here on the Farm Drive with me, David Kekina. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a minute for sure, and I hope you're doing all right wherever you are watching us from. Remember, keep watching us and keep talking to us through all our social media platforms. That is, we have Facebook at A Farmers Media, we have Instagram, A Farmers Media with Z, and then we have Twitter, A Farmers_Media. Right there, I'll be sampling your feedback, sending your contribution to this program. We'll be having a very interesting conversation this evening, one that has been avoided for quite some time, and for the viewer, it has been known to raise conspiracies here and there. And this evening we're going to be talking about tendering, and we're talking about the tendering specifically for farm produce, and we're looking at the whole process in this conversation. Remember, join us in case you have friends over there. Invite them to join this link, invite them to join us right away. And just before, even as we go on, I know this time majority of you are probably on their way to home. You're wrapping up work, could be on the farm, could be you are transiting on our roads within Nairobi Metropolitan, and traffic update is something that you look forward to when it comes to the farm drive. There has been an accident that has happened on Mombasa Road a few minutes ago. That is, Mombasa Road outbound outside Semco Industrial Park. That is few hundred meters from the Gateway Mall. And therefore there's a little bit of traffic right there. So in case you're using Mombasa Road and you have not left, you might consider slacking a little bit, even as the traffic officers clear that path for you. I'll continue with I'll be giving you more details on the same even as we go on. Just a reminder for those of you, in case you were wondering when will you renew your driving license, then NTSA has made a very clear clarification that they will still be renewing the driving licenses, contrary to what had been spreading earlier on whether they will continue or they will not, after a court laid aside the traffic rules of 2020. And so it is clear now that you can go ahead and apply for your driving license, even as we ensure your safety on the road as well as on the farm. Now, welcome. Now, I had hinted minutes ago on what will be our topic this evening. We're going to be having a very interesting conversation. Also, feel free to send in your feedback through our comment section. There's one thing I'd really want to know: what was your case with tenders? Yeah, what has been your experience with tenders? Put it in your comment section, and I'll be getting to sample some of that even as we move on with this conversation. When it comes to tenders, you might be asking yourself how we came to this conversation of tenders and tendering specifically for farm produce. Now, several days ago, we were having this conversation on potential markets for your produce. We are talking about you have grown your produce. You used the best fertilizers in the market, you used the best products in the market, the best of pesticides, the best of herbicides, you watered properly as it ought to, and now you have your produce ready. But the next question for the farmer always is, where will you sell that produce? Where do you sell that produce? And sometimes we mentioned an array of avenues where you can direct your produce after sale. And just to recap, among the avenues we mentioned, we talked about the wholesale market. Here is where you as a farmer, you have an audience, or rather people who are waiting for your produce there to buy it in wholesale. And we see the advantage of this of such a market where you're selling things in wholesale is where all your produce go at once, so it reduces your stress, right? And also, at times as a farmer, probably you interpersonal skills are not, you do not want to directly interact with everyone who's buying. And they said this market is one of your favorites. Yeah, this is one of the things that you love so much, and you love. It's such a relief if you get a market where all your produce is being bought at once. And here you might also interact with brokers and middlemen. These are such people who offer such a market for you. And the downside of this is that you might sell your produce. Your produce might fetch, in as much as you may make profit, it might not be the optimum profit, because you're buying, broker is buying from you, or rather we have a middleman in the scene, and the middleman of course will try to negotiate from the farm gate so that they can raise the price a little bit when they're taking it to the retail, or rather to the end consumer, so that they can make a profit for themselves. And well, as much as that is a potential market, we mentioned it and gave its pros and cons. Remember, you can follow that conversation right on a link. You can check our pages and you'll see that conversation on our previous programs right this week. And we also mentioned another potential market for your produce, and these we were talking about the export market. You might choose to export your produce and sell it outside the country. And for this one, we said you have to plan yourself properly. We will be getting we'll choose a day, settle and discuss this extensively. We'll be looking at some of the things that you might be considering when you're thinking about the export market, where you're selling your produce out of this country. Remember, this one you have to be having people on the other end, or rather you have to have planned yourself to have someone on the receiving end, such that when you're exporting your produce, they'll be knowing what are the minimum requirements for your produce. At least it will inform how you're taking care of your plants even as you do the growing. There's also something else. We talked about the direct market, and this one we said is the least favorite when it comes for the farmers, especially those who do not want to interact with people directly. And hats off to every farmer who does a direct sales market, especially if you're doing lots of produce. And here we talked about the farmer themselves, you as a farmer directly going outside there with your produce, having it at hand, and selling it, setting up a shop, or rather a center or a drop point where you are selling it directly to the people. And we say that the beauty about this form of sale is that you are able to make as much profit as possible, because you're selling your produce not at a wholesale price, not at the farm gate price, but rather at the retail price. For example, if a watermelon you are selling, you are to sell 20 kgs per kilo at the farm gate price, when it comes to retail, now you might be selling close to 45 shillings or 60 shillings a kilo, because right now you're dealing directly with the end consumer. And if it's not the end consumer, those who are buying or rather purchasing from you at this point are people who can buy at that price. And that, we said, is the best the advantage of direct sale or direct market when it comes to farm produce. And we said, as the farmer, you can decide to be there. If your social skills are on point and your sales skills are on point, you can decide to be there in person. However, you can also have an alternate plan. On the alternate plan, this is where you might choose to employ someone, or rather bring in a family member, probably your child, your wife, your sibling, someone who might come in and assist you in making the sales or closing the deals with the retailers directly. Also, another advantage of this one, besides now having you can work with it without you being directly there, is that you get cash directly. As in other forms of sales, sometimes they tell you they'll give you the money after sales, and so you have to give away the produce and lay back and chill and wait. Yes, your produce is out there, but you're here chilling and praying that all the it goes well in the market. Yeah, there are no distractions along the way. Your produce does not degrade along the way. You're just hopeful. For example, you're transporting tomatoes. You just hope that your crates of tomato will go intact up to the market, and you are hoping that they will make the sales, right? You're hoping the market will accept your produce. So that whatever will be made from that translates to your bank account, or rather reflects to your cash book. But the advantage of direct sales, we said, is that you get the money there and then, and the deal is complete. Cash on delivery, and that, we said, is one of the potential markets. We also identified another potential market, which is now the retailers and supermarkets. We are talking about retailers, retail stores. We are talking about, hotels and all these people who are purchasing products from you so that they can resell them. And we said, among the requirements for such a tender, especially when we are talking about the supermarkets, about the retail stores, is that they come with standards that you must meet when it comes to the sales, because among the things that these outlets are looking forward to giving the end user of your produce is they promise, they give them an assurance of quality. Yeah, they give them an assurance of freshness. They give them an assurity of they want the trust of the end user. And so even as these joints buy from you, they're looking forward to looking at the quality of your produce. If your product is of quality, again, they want to be sure that you will be consistent, because they do not want you to supply today and tomorrow they can no longer find you. And again, they need your product to be presentable. If it's potatoes, you might consider going an extra mile, that is, washing them just to ensure that they are more presentable. If it's cabbage, you might consider reducing the number of leaves so that the cabbage looks presentable and neat. Same to this other produce. Is it sweet potatoes? You might consider washing them, right? Same to other mangoes and whatever. And so this is a market on its own. And we also identified another market. Now, this market is where we are basing our discussion this evening on tendering. We're talking about institutions. We identified institutions. They vary. We have schools, we have hospitals. Talk of all these institutions, be it private, be it government institutions. We are talking about hospitals, we are talking about universities, we are talking about other government institutions. This includes public offices. Yeah, we are talking about prisons. All these are people who constantly use, or rather these are institutions that constantly have a constant demand for farm produce, day in, day out, simply because if we're talking about schools, we have students or pupils to start with. If it's the primary schools, we have mandatory lunch for these students that are supposed to be given lunch in these public institutions, or rather even the private ones where lunch has to be prepared. And so that is one of the avenues where the products are being consumed. Some of them are boarding schools, and so there is also a chance they are taking dinner. Yeah, so that is another avenue. We are also talking about say prisons. They are having the 3 meals a day, probably breakfast, lunch and dinner, and all these meals have to be supplied consistently. And so we are saying consistency is one of the things that these people or these institutions will be looking at. But one thing that is common between all the institutions that we've mentioned, ranging from hospitals, schools, talk about prisons, all these institutions, one thing in common about them is that they use tendering as a means of acquiring the food produce. Yeah, all of them. And the beauty of a tender, we will get to that in a short while. But we're saying the beauty about these institutions, all of them use tenders. And tender, when you hear tender for a farmer, that is good news. And other people that also, other avenues that also require farm produce, we are talking about processing industries. For example, we might be having factories in Nairobi. We have industrial factories in Nairobi. For example, the crisps processing plants, many other, we're talking about be it chocolate, or in other farm centers, not just specifically in Nairobi, probably the center close to you, mostly close to centers. We have industrial towns, yeah? The companies are in the industrial urban setting, and then we have the farms in the rural settings. And most of the time you find that these companies sometimes do not own the farms. For example, you might have, yes, the likes of Dalamere who have their own cattle, but they also purchase milk from dairy farmers. But we are talking about, these institutions, these industries that do the processing of crisps, talk about chevda, for example. These are potato produce. We have those who do the popcorns. Yeah, we have a majority of these companies, not to mention all of them, but we have these companies that do not necessarily have their own farms. For example, we have the tobacco processing companies. They do cigarettes, and everything else. All they do is value addition to the produce that is already ready. And so what they do is they purchase these from a farmer who is doing it on the ground. This is where they have the farm, most likely in the rural setting. And they also obtain their produce in forms of tenders, right? Tendering. Look at other instances or other avenues where we are having, you as a farmer providing your produce there, or rather an institution that consumes your produce. We are talking, for example, if it's meat that you're doing, we have for example, Farmer's Choice, just to mention one, that does buys or purchases the pigs directly from the farmer. And for that you need to have a tender as well, such that you can agree on the terms and conditions suitable for the growth of your pigs, how the environment in which you're growing them. They will give you inspectors along the way, just to come. People will come and confirm whether you're taking care of your pigs in the right way, in the manner that they should be taken care of. We have other institutions, for example, the KMC right here in Athi River, the Kenya Meat Commission I'm talking about, where they give tenders to people who are supplying livestock. We're talking about cattle, supplying, cattle consistently to this farm. And all these things we are talking about, one conversation that keeps coming up when we talk of an institution and farm produce is tendering. And tendering, once you secure a tender as a farmer, you have a reason to smile. Not just yet, not because the tender is everything, but you understand the beauty of a tender is one, that this is an assured market. We are talking of an assured market. Secondly, it has some sense of security, unlike where you're giving people, you're giving random people, or people you trust, or people you just have no other option but to trust, for them to go with your produce out there to the market and sell and send you the money if they make it, when they make it, and how much, or whatever the amount of money they will make in the farm. And so you are totally dependent on them. Now, on the contrary, when it comes to institutions, the beauty about institutions is that they're really formalized. For example, talk of any school. Think about your local primary school. Think about your local high school that's around you. Think about the hospital that is next to you. Think about a prison that is close to you, or reform center. All these institutions. Talk about schools. We've mentioned a limited number of. We've mentioned those companies. Mention all those. All of them have a reputable name for themselves. And one thing they're talking about is making sure that they are on the right side of the law. And so lawsuits is not something they are into. And again, in terms of quality, it's something they do not want to mess around with. In terms of their brand name, most of these companies we are talking about have a brand for themselves, and they would not want to mess with the name of their brand. And so eventually, what we have here, as a result of that, is some sense of security, in that you are sure that if you sign a contract with this institution and it does not heed to the terms of the contract, and probably they do not pick up your produce, there is a way in which you can follow up that, be it physically, you at least have a location as to where you can find them, right? Because it's beyond one person. We are talking about a whole institution. A school cannot disappear in one day. There's a whole institution. Even if an individual disappears from that school, we still have the institution in place, and so your tender remains to be a constant if you've already gotten yourself into one. And also the other security bit about it is that, well, when it comes to law, you can sue the institution as a whole, not just an individual. And the beauty about an institution is that they'll try as much as possible to reduce lawsuits, and therefore they will heed to their promises in terms when they were getting to an agreement. And all that we're talking about, the safety of tendering when it comes to to farm produce. The other beauty of it is that once you have a tender with you, it is easier for you to get or land yourself a loan in a bank. You can walk in a bank and tell them, I have this tender where I'm supposed to be doing these, or rather your local circle. You can walk to them, tell them you're supposed to be doing these, and these are the expected output. Yes, this is expected produce. This is how long that will take. For example, you're doing capsicum takes 3 months, for example, or rather you're doing onions, which takes roughly about the same time, or gourgets or squash, and it takes around the same time. So at least you have a time frame for which the produce will take for it to grow. You also have exactly what you're growing. For example, you have done your maths, you have your cost of input, the cost that you'll have, the cost of production, the cost you will incur to produce all these products. You have it in mind. And so when you're going to approach such an institution, a financial institution, be it a SACCO, be it a microfinance, be it a bank, you stand a chance of getting financed, especially when they know that you have a tender, because they know they are assured of the consistency, and so it becomes a little bit easier for you to get financed for a tender purpose. There's also friends. If I know that I'm giving you a little bit of money from my pocket, and it's a tender, at least I'm assured you will be paid no matter what goes on. And tenders are a safe haven when it comes to the sale of produce. They are a safe haven when it comes to the sale of produce. And now we today, among the things we'll be looking at is we have established that tenders are a potential market for your produce, right? No, these institutions, and the institutions use tendering as one of the means in which you can supply produce to them. So that is an assured market, it's a guaranteed market. Two, you have the safety of having a produce. You have the safety, of having a purchase and a ready market for your produce. And three, when you're doing your growing, you are growing for a specific market. And that's the beauty of it. You're not just growing for the sake of growing, you're growing knowing there's a specific market in place. And secondly, you're not growing to bargain the price of these commodities. If you're winning the tender, you have agreed on a set price, and that price stands. Most of the tenders, we will be going through some of the sample tenders that are out there, what they need, what they're asking for, what they're looking out for, and you realize some of the things that they assure you is that for example, is a term, a currency. For example, they become very precise. They say we will be using the Kenyan currency, the Kenyan shilling currency, and with that they also get to be more specific and say that the charges remain for that period, right? For example, 120 days, if that is the period in which you're supposed to supply the tender, they tell you that the shilling coin, you'll be going with the same rate for that period, or at least without putting inflation into consideration. And that is something that you really want as a farmer, because you might be doing this right now, and if you're doing the Kenyan currency, then after a while the Kenyan currency has dropped, and you end up on the losing end as the farmer, because you'll be selling at a lower price in comparison to the market price, the current market price. And so the beauty about tenders is that it gives you that security, all that in store, all that in paper. Again, something that you do not want to miss out when we are coming back after the short commercial break that we are just about to take. We'll be talking about the process of applying. We'll be knowing what do these institutions require from you as a farmer. Yeah, what do you need to prepare for you to be eligible as one who can win a tender. Again, we'll be discussing about how are these tenders even issued. Yeah, this whole issue and this whole conversation about tendering and tenders, will be continuing with that right after this short commercial break. But remember, don't go far, we'll be back in a jiffy.
Agriculture is the art and science of cultivating the soil, growing crops, and raising livestock. Agriculture provides most of the world's food and fabrics. It is not only a source of food and income, but also creates employment opportunities for many people in the world. Over 1 billion people worldwide work in agriculture, generating 2.4 trillion for the global economy. The global impact of farming on the environment is revealed that 40% of the Earth's land is now given over to agriculture. Agricultural development is one of the most powerful tools to end extreme poverty, boost shared prosperity, and feed a projected 9.7 billion people by 2050. And we, the Our Farmers Media, roll the carpet for you as we welcome you to our thrilling farm visits to different farmers that educate and inspire you in different sectors in agriculture. Catch us also on our shows on all our social media platforms as we bring you educative and informative information that will help you learn and guide you on your agriculture journey to success. Our farmers attain knowledge and grow profits. Spinach is a dark leafy vegetable that originated in Persia. Spinach is a superfood as it is loaded with tons of nutrients in a low-calorie package. Spinach has been used by various cultures throughout the history. Spinach is a versatile vegetable and can be eaten raw or cooked. It can be incorporated quite easily in any diet as it is cheap and easy to prepare.
Beetroot is a highly nutritious root vegetable. The beetroot is the taproot portion of a beet plant. It is one of the many varieties of the genus Beta vulgaris, all of which are mostly grown for their edible taproots and leaves. Beetroot is a root crop that takes approximately 3 to 4 months to mature. Beetroot is a fairly easy crop to grow as long as the soil is well cultivated prior to planting. Beetroots do not enjoy wet, boggy or shady soils. Beetroot can be sown in trays and transplanted when the seedlings have 2 true leaves. Plant in full sun, space seedlings 10 to 15 centimeters apart, and rows 20 centimeters to 30 centimeters apart so they have room to grow. Beetroots are also ideal for containers or raised beds. Beetroots will happily thrive in small areas as long as there is at least 20 centimeters depth of soil. Beetroot has been used not only for food but also for treatment for numerous conditions.
Welcome back. In case you're joining us, then you're on the second part right here on Farm Drive. Remember, this is a Farmers Media with me, David Kagina, and today we are having a very interesting conversation. As you can see right here on the taglines, we are talking about tendering for farm produce. A very interesting conversation. And even as we go on, let me just remind you that continue engaging with us through our social media platforms. We have Facebook, that is a Farmers Media. We also have Instagram, a Farmers with Z. We also have Twitter, a Farmers_media, and we will be talking. We can engage more on this conversation. Let me know your experience through tendering. What has tendering shown you, especially in this country, and how has been your previous experience? Have you completed a successful tender? Was it easy? Was it hard? Let me know your experience through our social media platform, that is a Farmers Media on Facebook, a Farmers_media on Instagram, as well as a Farmers_media on Twitter. Let's keep talking. And even as we go on with this conversation, let us get into Twitter, in case let's see what's trending in the country right now, what's making headlines right now. And among the things that are trending currently is one news here where a Kenyan man has been intercepted by the Kenya Revenue Authority officials at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, traveling with 238 million cash money. He was traveling with 238 million cash money, and he was caught at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Something that raised the eyebrows, for the Kenya Revenue Authority officials, is that this man was giving contradicting opinions. Moving from, he says he was selling cattle in Burundi. The money came from selling cattle in Burundi. Again, he says he has been working with KMC, that is the Kenya Meat Commission, right there. Again, he shifts. Now he says that he was working, he won the money in lottery, and all these contradictions are what has led to the interception of this Kenyan man arriving from Bujumbura, Burundi, with 238 million Kenyan shillings at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Wow, that is quite a load sum of cash. If indeed farming generates this much money, then farming is worth it. Checking other things that are trending, or rather making right there on Twitter, creating conversations, we have Burundi. I believe we have Burundi trending there. I believe it's because of the conversation right there that we just had of the Kenyan man that has been intercepted. We also have hashtag TIFA 2022 election polls. These are the election polls showing, presidential, if elections were to be held today, who would be the presidential candidate, who would be leading, who would deputize who, and that is trending right there. We also have reroute trending for reasons we will get into later. We also have KPLC trending, yeah. We also have Mombasa. We also have Brookside. The conversation about Brookside is quite interesting. Seems today matters agriculture are making headlines today, because Brookside, there's also Congo right there. The whole conversation coming around, the remarks by Deputy President about creating foreign markets for milk, for the Kenyan milk, and that really sparked a conversation internationally, because we had the delegation in Congo saying that has really caused a spark, in Congo, and so they were calling upon the deputy president, to respond to that. And right alone, the spokesperson for his presidential campaign, that is Hussein Mohammed rather, issued a statement saying that the deputy president has really clarified properly, saying that what he meant by the statement did not mean that there's a problem in Congo. What he actually meant is that he plans to work hand in hand with the foreign government to ensure that they conduct business, especially matters milk. And that could be the reason why Brookside and Congo, that is the reason actually why Brookside and Congo are trending for you right there. And just to check on traffic, on how far the traffic is going for you right now, for all of those going home. Hoping Mombasa Road is easing up a little bit, even after the accident that we had been experienced a little bit right there. But the update right there is that Mombasa Road is constantly hectic. It's very hectic at the moment. There's no progress so far, though. It's saying that something, the accident is from the accident. It's the accident is the main cause of traffic on that road right there. We'll be checking other roads even for you, just for you to ensure that even as you make your way back home, from your farm, from your workplace, from wherever you're going to, from the marketplace, that you become strategic in matters, the route that you'll be using. And for now, the news that we have is for those using Mombasa Road, be careful, really be careful. Now, back to a conversation back to where we were before we went for that commercial break, and even before we get to receive these news updates. We were having a very interesting conversation on tendering, and we have really established in the first part that indeed tendering is a wide market when it comes to farm produce, and it has some advantages. We have talked about the security that comes with tendering. Tendering comes with the security, the assurance that once your produce are ready, you already have a place to go. It comes with accountability, because once you sign a tender, it becomes easier for you to follow up with that institution, because as we have established, most of these institutions that work with tendering are reputable organizations, are reputable farms, are farms that have a name to protect, and so definitely they do not want to mess up with you. And so we have agreed that tendering is indeed a very huge platform for anyone planning to venture into, or anyone wishing to explore this market of institutions, because one thing about this market is they need these products constantly, because we've talked about schools will need food day in, day out. We've talked about hospitals, they'll need food day in, day out. We've talked about institutions, for example, the milk processing plants. We've talked about these companies, millers, who need maize constantly throughout the year, since they'll be producing. And so if you get that tender, that means for you will have to constantly supply this produce in a manner in which you will have agreed with these people, and that becomes quite good, because as a farmer, what you need is a constant market. You do not want to make sales today and you stay 2 years without making a sale, and then you make another sale, say even though it was a good tender. What you need constantly is a constant market for your farm produce, and the tender we have established is the perfect place for just that. And now when we come to venturing into the process, the whole process of applying a tender, or the whole process of getting into the tendering business, first and foremost, what you need to do is that you need to identify is that these institutions offer tenders only to companies and businesses. So that means that this is a business to business transaction. What does that mean? So if you have your farm right there and your farm is not registered as a business, then you are locked out automatically from the process of tendering. And so in the interaction, when we have this conversation right here on a farmers media, we talk about transitioning the ordinary farmer from just being an ordinary farmer to being an agripreneur, meaning such that converting their farming into a business. And by a business, that comes with the very basics, of a business, which comes with, you have to register your business. This is according to, our Kenyan government. You have to register your business. And the beauty about registering a business is it's not a very complicated process. It's something that you can complete in a day, in a week or two. You're done. You have your business certificate right there with you. You have gone online. There's a platform online where you can register your business, and also from there it becomes easier, because after registration, or once you have your business name, you have your business company. I think we'll be getting into these things in details. You have a business, you have secured a business name, that is your farm. For example, you could be doing chili for export or for tendering, or rather you could be doing potatoes, and you choose a suitable name for your farm. It could be, for example, we know some reputable farms around the country. For example, around Nyeri, you've heard of the Amboko farm. Those around Naivasha, you've heard of multiple farms, especially for growing flowers. And it's not just because they're doing it for export. Even if you're a farmer out there and you have a farm and you're targeting, in mind you have or rather you desire to venture into the tendering process, then it's very important that you register your business. Start with the business name, then register the business as a company itself. And and we're talking about registration is once you gain the registration, it's very important also that you register a Kenya Revenue Authority PIN for your business. You see, right now we've just had a conversation of a Kenyan man who's been intercepted the 238 million Kenyan shillings. And they've said they were doing business. No, what Kenya Revenue Authority will do is look at the business, if they have a business name in the first place, and then look at the transactions that the business has been having. And if they're making this amount of money, that means they have been paying tax. And so something else that you want to take care of and ensure that you have on your arms is, the tax compliance from the Kenya Revenue Authority. This is just a confirmation that you have been following through properly the process of tendering. In terms of you have been remitting your tax faithfully, such that if you have been doing it faithfully, then you are eligible for, that's the first step into being eligible for a tender. Because again, if you have been evading tax, the government does not want to continue working with someone who is evading tax, and even private institutions do not want to be associated. Remember, we said they are protecting the brands, and so they do not want to be associated with someone who has been seriously evading tax. And so you are looking into having a tax compliance certificate yourself. And also you need a physical location for your office. And when we say a physical location for your office, the beauty about this is you do not need to hire go hire an office in town. If you can, well, if you can afford, that's okay. If you can find a center, well, that's okay. But the beauty about the farm is that your farm can be your office, and so you can issue the location of your farm as your business location. That's the beauty. When you're going to register a business, you'll need to give them a physical address, and if it can be your farm, the better. So it becomes easier to trace you and track you should there be need of that later on in the process. And the best company, when you're going into, we've said that you need to register your business, your farm as a business, or rather as a company. And so if you're looking into venturing into the tendering for farm produce, and you're going to register your business as a company, what you're looking forward to doing is register, especially in Kenya, tendering, if you are targeting tendering, register as a partnership or a limited company. That way you stand a higher chance, and you stand at a better position when it comes to tendering process. Ensure that when you're going to register your your farm as a business, you register it as a you register the company as a partnership. A partnership, that means it's you and someone and some other people. It could be you, it could be a group of people who have come together to register the company. Yeah, you could agree with you and several other farmers register register same company, so that it can suit you. Or rather, you can decide, you as you and your spouse, or you and another friend, you and a neighbor, decide to register your parcel of land together as a company, or rather register a company. And so the company, you should register it either as a partnership or a limited company. Yeah, so those two categories are the most favorable categories if you're thinking of tendering, and now you're registering your farm for tendering in mind. Yeah, for the tendering of your farm produce. And also, something else that you really want to ensure that you get it right is have the needed documents. Have the needed documents right there, set for you. We will be going through two, or at least two, of tenders that have been put out there for the supply of farm produce. We'll be going through some of those tenders, and we'll be looking at what do they need, what are they looking for, and what are their expectations when it comes to you as a farmer. And so we are talking about you having your documentation ready. Yeah, because most of these tenders, now if in case you're asking yourself where are these tenders found, most of these tenders are made public. They are published through newspapers. That is the most common form of tendering processes, especially if you're looking at government institutions. Mostly they use newspapers. Again, they might be, if it's a local primary school, that right there, they might be looking at advertising through their billboards or their websites, official websites. This, we are talking also about these other companies. There's a platform on their website where they've put details, in terms of, there's a slot for tendering, so you might look there and look out for these tendering opportunities. And it applies for all institutions. If you're looking at the Kenya Meat Commission and you're looking forward to supplying your cattle right there, you might go to their website and look at the tendering, and there you can see if there's an open tender that people are applying for, or rather if you already have applied. Most of the time they will give the updates right there on their website. And the beauty why most of these things are done that way is to ensure transparency in the tendering process. Yeah, because initially, if most of the complaints you have, I've even heard about the farmers. There's one Esther Watuku who was complaining of alikuwa anasema tender ni kujuana. You need to know someone for you to get a tender. And so the government has put policies in place to ensure as much as possible that this does not come in play. And one of the things they do is, one, they've made sure that all tenders are announced publicly, and that means they have to be given, the public has to know that the tender is happening, and so publications have to be made, be it in the newspapers, be it in these company websites, that they really need to publicize these opportunities. Again, something else that they look at is that most institutions do not want you to be related to either directly related, or rather directly affiliated to the people working in that institution. For example, they do not want you to be a relative to any of the staff members or board members or key decision makers in that board, which will do the selection for the tenders. So they try, and as much as possible, to avoid picking people who are directly affiliated. That is to cut corruption and to ensure that those people who are coming are truly legit tenders. They give these tenders legit, in the right and correct manner in which they should be issued. And so even as you're looking forward to that, you might find these tenders, we've said, on the newspapers, on the company website. They might be announced on radio, they might be announced in the in the regional newsletters, or rather a publication just that goes is released in your local area, be it a newspaper, be it a local magazine, but these tenders are made public. And so what you want to ensure is that by the time this tender is made public, they have a number of requirements that they make public in terms of documentation. And the company name, the company registration certificate, the AGPO one, is just one of the requirements, one of the documents. We've talked about another document that might be needed. We are talking about the tax compliance certificate from the Kenya Revenue Authority. That is something that comes crucially in play. There's also something else they need when it comes to documents. They will give a paper, a tender paper. That is something that will never miss, a tender paper. And sometimes you'll find that most of the times this paper is paid for. You purchase the tender documents. Mostly it's usually at a non-refundable fee of around 1,000 Kenyan shillings, and most of the time it's there. And so there in the paper or in the tender sheet, they'll give instructions of what documents you are needed to carry with you. You talk about the business registration certificate, talk about the Kenya Revenue Authority certificate, clear tax obligations, clearing you for all your tax obligations certificate. And they'll also ask a number of questions, including security, where is your land. They might need clarity, how consistent you are. All these things will come in, they'll come with the needed documents, which is one of them is the instructions that come with the tender details, and so we'll be delving more about that and what those details entail, because we'll be going through some of those, at least two of those tenders, and seeing exactly what they're looking for when it comes to these tenders. And remember to be also very keen, even when you're submitting these documents. Remember to be very keen on everything, especially even on the tender papers or that they will be giving you to sign, the ones that you're supposed to pick from the institutions at the non-refundable fee or refundable fee for in some instances. But among the things that you really need to be very keen when you're filling these papers, to ensure that you do not miss a section on these papers, because once you miss a section, these people will take you for not being keen, and probably that section is very key, and so that will automatically kick you out of the necessary process. So in this time and point, we have looked at what you need. We have said that you definitely need to register your business. Have your business registration certificate. Also, tax compliance certificate is very essential. You need to be cleared by the KRA to ensure that you've been paying your taxes as much as possible. And the third one is a tender form that you'll be given by the institution that is offering the tender, and this has details that needs you as the tender applicant to fill. And so that is just the highlights of the things that you need for you to get into the tendering business. You need to have those first. Ensure that your firm is registered as a business. That is a non-negotiable. And ensure that you're tax compliant, even as your business, especially if it's new, then you're lucky. If you have done other businesses before, if you have had other arrears with KRA, ensure that you clear these arrears before you can reapply, so that you can qualify. When you apply for these tenders, they need to ensure that they're dealing with a clean person, because they are protecting the name of their institutions. And now, ladies and gentlemen, even as we talk about tendering and everything, among other things we'll be coming to look at is the quality of the product. And when you talk about the quality of the product, this emanates from the chemicals that you've been using when you're growing your produce, or rather, be it your cattle, what have they been consuming. And even as we come to that conversation, it's very important that we mention the procedures and ways that you should things that you should put in place even as you are using or interacting with these chemicals. And we're talking about this campaign by UNIDO and Markup Kenya that is pushing for the safe use of pesticides. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be having a short video playing right after this conversation, right here before we head for that break. But remember, among the things that you want to be highlighting even as we talk about the preparation for even the purchasing of these pesticides is that you want to ensure that you're purchasing your pesticide from a licensed agro dealer and specialized shops. This ensures that you do not buy fake produce. Yeah, because if you want a tender eventually, then you need to have used the right produce for the right products for your produce. And we are talking about you ensuring that you are buying your pesticides from a licensed agro dealer as well as a licensed retail shop that is selling these produce. And we'll be having more about this conversation, but first, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this conversation.
Agrovet shops are important outlets where farmers can easily get seeds, pesticides and other farm inputs that are vital for successful crop and animal production.
Agrovets are very key to society because you find that the agrovet attendant is the closest person, is the closest expert that you have who can advise you on the product that you can use on what crop.
Agro dealers and their agents assist farmers in providing quality inputs. Here are some of the guidelines that appropriators should look out for before starting an agrovet business. Choose a location that is suitable and does not pose any undue risk to people and the environment.
When we are licensing the agrovets, we look at the physical structure of the facility, whereby the facility should be well ventilated, it should have enough space, should have shelves.
Business location is an essential factor to excel in agrovet business. Agrovets thrive well near agricultural farms. You need to consider the competition in the area. An appropriate agrovet shop has several qualities including accessibility to customers, security, adequate storage space, ventilation, adequate water supply. When starting your agrovet business, it is important to ensure you have a neat display that communicates reliability and credibility. Ensure you can distinguish between genuine suppliers, seeking out accredited dealers to avoid buying counterfeit goods. Obtain a license from the requisite regulators such as the Pest Controls Board and display it prominently on the premises. To kick off a successful agrovet business, you will need to meet all the legal requirements.
If you want to get into this business of operating an agrovet, the first thing that you should do is to get into our website, whereby you can get a form, an application that is a premises licensing form, whereby you can fill the form, or you can visit either of our region offices in Nairobi, Nakuru, Kisumu, Mombasa, and Embu. Then you are required to attach your academic certificate, and you also attach, for you to be a licensed agrovet, you must have a license from the county government.
You will need a county business permit. This is the common permit that is needed for all businesses. If you intend to stock seeds, you will require licensing from the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, KEPHIS.
KEPHIS has come up with different measures to ensure that the produce that is placed in the market and also exported is meeting market requirement and also food safety standards. We analyze agrochemicals, that is now the pesticide formulations, to ensure that what's again being formulated and also sold in the Kenya market also meets the set specifications.
You will also need to commit yourself to not sell counterfeits by signing the Code of Conduct on Pesticide Management through accreditation by the Agrochemicals Association of Kenya. Here, members follow the Code of Conduct on Pesticide Management, which the industry uses for self-regulation. Through the code, AAK encourages the best practices for agro dealers, including responsible pesticide use and ethical business practice. Pesticides may pose risks to humans and the environment from manufacture to usage. One source of risk is during storage and handling at the point of supply to users. The pesticide should be stored under suitable conditions to maintain its physical and chemical properties until the end user receives it. Spillage could occur directly on persons handling them, contamination of food, or leakage into the environment during the various stages of transportation, loading, unloading, and storage. As appropriator, you should prioritize the safety of your products. One way of doing this is through proper placement. Pesticides should not be placed directly on the ground or on areas prone to flooding. Floor spaces should be uncluttered in a way that permits easy inspection and to allow free flow of air. This also enables immediate cleanup in the event of any leakage or spills, which will be easily visible. Containers should be well arranged to minimize unnecessary handling and to avoid mechanical damage. As a general principle, systems of storage should be flexible and adaptable.
We have a curriculum that we train our farmers with, and it starts with encouraging them to adopt integrated pest management, which is basically giving them options that they can use apart from pesticides. Once they understand this, they are able to responsibly use the pesticides because they understand that they do not need to always resort to pesticides whenever they have an infestation on their farm.
Remember, proper usage of pesticides increases yields and market access for your produce. Food safety is everyone's responsibility, starting with the farmer. Dawa bora, mazao bora.
There through that very informative video is that it's very important to ensure that you take care of the things that you buy, ensuring that you buy pesticides from very licensed agro dealers and specialized shops, as also request for a receipt and batch number of the produce, so that in case there is something, in case it doesn't go well with your farm, you need to react, you need to check back. At least you have a proper way of following up with that. And also purchase, remember to purchase pesticides that are properly authorized by the for use in Kenya by the Pest Control and Licensing Board. You also ensure that you request an appropriate measuring device with every purchase, so that you follow the instructions clearly, such that you do not overuse the pesticides, something that will lead to a loss and as well as having a problem in terms of health. And so we are pushing for the safe use of this pesticide. Remember hashtag Dawabora Mazao Bora, and also remember this campaign is being pushed courtesy of UNIDO as well as Markup Kenya. In case you have any inquiries, matters, when it comes to pesticides, when it comes to safe use of these chemicals, remember to reach out to them through their social media platforms at Markup Kenya as well as at UNIDO Kenya. And you'll be getting more information on that. But remember, we're pushing for Dawa Bora, Mazao Bora. We are headed for a short commercial break. We'll be back in a jiffy, so don't go far. We'll continue with this conversation that we're having, a very interesting and engaging conversation, matters tendering when it comes to farm produce. And before we head for that break, let me just read one of your comments right here. There's Mary Rose Rashidi Emene, who says she's streaming from DRC. Interesting. She says, my name is Mary Rose. I'm an agripreneur from the DRC, precisely in North Kivu. My company is Geisha Farm. Yeah, we are in agriculture, poultry farming, beekeeping, and processing. And indeed, company registration is very important. As you can see, Mary right here has registered her company, and now with the tax compliance, in her country, she is very eligible for business and especially tendering. When it comes to tendering, we will continue with this conversation, sampling more of your comments right here on our platforms. That is A Farmers Media on Facebook, as well as A Farmers_media on Twitter, as well as A Farmers with Z on Instagram. And we will be checking at what you have to say when it comes to tendering. I really want to know what your experience has been with tendering, especially here in the country.
Agriculture is the art and science of cultivating the soil, growing crops, and raising livestock. Agriculture provides most of the world's food and fabrics. It is not only a source of food and income, but also creates employment opportunities for many people in the world. Over 1 billion people worldwide work in agriculture, generating 2.4 trillion for the global economy. The global impact of farming on the environment is revealed that 40% of the Earth's land is now given over to agriculture. Agricultural development is one of the most powerful tools to end extreme poverty, boost shared prosperity, and feed a projected 9.7 billion people by 2050. And we, the Our Farmers Media, roll the carpet for you as we welcome you to our thrilling farm visits to different farmers that educate and inspire you in different sectors in agriculture. Catch us also on our shows on all our social media platforms as we bring you educative and informative information that will help you learn and guide you on your agriculture journey to success. Our farmers attain knowledge and grow profits.
Agrovet shops are important outlets where farmers can easily get seeds, pesticides, and other farm inputs that are vital for successful crop and animal production.
Agrovets are very key to society because you find that the agrovet attendant is the closest person, is the closest expert that you have who can advise you on the product that you can use on what crop.
Agro dealers and their agents assist farmers in providing quality inputs. Here are some of the guidelines that appropriators should look out for before starting an agrovet business. Choose a location that is suitable and does not pose any undue risk to people and the environment.
When we are licensing the agrovets, we look at the physical structure of the facility, whereby the facility should be well ventilated, it should have enough space, should have shelves.
Business location is an essential factor to excel in agrovet business. Agrovets thrive well near agricultural farms. You need to consider the competition in the area. An appropriate agrovet shop has several qualities including accessibility to customers, security, adequate storage space, ventilation, adequate water supply. When starting your agrovet business, it is important to ensure you have a neat display that communicates reliability and credibility. Ensure you can distinguish between genuine suppliers, seeking out accredited dealers to avoid buying counterfeit goods. Obtain a license from the requisite regulators such as the Pest Controls Board and display it prominently on the premises. To kick off a successful agrovet business, you will need to meet all the legal requirements.
If you want to get into this business of operating an agrovet, the first thing that you should do is to get into our website, whereby you can get a form, an application that is a premises licensing form, whereby you can fill the form, or you can visit either of our region offices in Nairobi, Nakuru, Kisumu, Mombasa, and Embu. Then you are required to attach your academic certificate, and you also attach, for you to be a licensed agrovet, you must have a license from the county government.
You will need a county business permit. This is the common permit that is needed for all businesses. If you intend to stock seeds, you will require licensing from the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, KEPHIS.
KEPHIS has come up with different measures to ensure that the produce that is placed in the market and also exported is meeting market requirement and also food safety standards. We analyze agrochemicals, that's now the pesticide formulations, to ensure that what's again being formulated and also sold in the Kenya market also meets the set specifications.
You will also need to commit yourself to not sell counterfeits by signing the Code of Conduct on Pesticide Management through accreditation by the Agrochemicals Association of Kenya. Here, members follow the Code of Conduct on Pesticide Management, which the industry uses for self-regulation. Through the code, AAK encourages the best practices for agro dealers, including responsible pesticide use and ethical business practice. Pesticides may pose risks to humans and the environment from manufacture to usage. One source of risk is during storage and handling at the point of supply to users. The pesticide should be stored under suitable conditions to maintain its physical and chemical properties until the end user receives it. Spillage could occur directly on persons handling them, contamination of food, or leakage into the environment during the various stages of transportation, loading, unloading, and storage. As appropriator, you should prioritize the safety of your products. One way of doing this is through proper placement. Pesticides should not be placed directly on the ground or on areas prone to flooding. Floor spaces should be uncluttered in a way that permits easy inspection and to allow free flow of air. This also enables immediate cleanup in the events of any leakage or spills, which will be easily visible. Containers should be well arranged to minimize unnecessary handling and to avoid mechanical damage. As a general principle, systems of storage should be flexible and adaptable.
We have a curriculum that we train our farmers with, and it starts with encouraging them to adopt integrated pest management, which is basically giving them options that they can use apart from pesticides. Once they understand this, they are able to responsibly use the pesticides because they understand that they do not need to always resort to pesticides whenever they have an infestation on their farm.
Remember, proper usage of pesticides increases yields and market access for your produce. Food safety is everyone's responsibility, starting with the farmer. Dawa bora, mazao bora.
It's 14 minutes past 5 o'clock, and we're getting into the second hour right here on Farm Drive. And thank you for joining me in this conversation today that we are having a very interesting conversation, on tendering for farm produce. It's a very interesting conversation. In the first segment, we mentioned the number of things that you need to have in place if you're thinking about tendering. One of them, a non-negotiable, is ensuring that you have registered your farm as a business, or rather you have yourself a company, which can be, and the most preferred form of company registrations, in case you are aiming at tendering, we've said ensure that you look at a partnership or a limited company. You can register your company as a partnership or a limited company if you're eyeing tendering. The other thing we've said is that you need to check with the tax guys, the Kenya Revenue Authority, ensure that you have proper taxation that is for those living in Kenya. In case you're living in another country, ensure that in that country that you have ensured that you have your tax obligation in place. But to go precisely for those in Kenya, reap more, because we're here and we understand these in detail. And among other things that we've said is that you also need to ensure that something good, that you need to ensure that you have complied rather with all statutory requirements. These are ranging from the certificate that you've talked about, the business certificate. We've talked about the tax compliance certificate. We also need a business permit. You're a business, you need to be conducting business, and so you're looking at having a business permit for yourself, and that means you will also be having a pin for your tax registration, the KRA pin. You need a pin certificate that needs to be there, and you need to have fill the tender document. And we've said that the tender document, you need to fill it precisely, looking at it very keenly, so that you do not miss on crucial segments, because we say when you miss on these segments, you kick out your tender automatically. It becomes kicked out automatically, and so you want to be keen, especially when you're looking at when you're applying these tenders and you're filling these documents. And it's very important that if you bought a tender, which is normally ranges between 1,000 and 2,000 Kenyan shillings, the tender form, which is non-refundable in most cases. If you've bought a tender, ensure that you also attach a receipt of the same together with the tender document, together with your business registration certificate, tax compliance certificate, your business permit, and any other document that might be requested by those offering the tender, be it the institution that you're looking at in this area. And ensure when you're applying this tender, please choose a relevant tender. Choose a tender that you can supply, because it goes with your reputation as well. Because if you have a mishap on one tender, it messes up your career, or rather your future, when it comes to the whole business of tendering and receiving and applying tenders. So you want to ensure that you're finding a relevant tender. The beauty about a relevant tender is, one, you are able to answer all questions that pertain to it when it comes to the tender forms, and also secondly, it's something that you can handle, so you're not looking at something outside your scope. Again, you do not want to risk with the tender in place, right? You want to get everything right in this instance. And so when you're saying you find an optimum value for your tender, this comes with something that we've been mentioning over and over again, the importance of you understanding your cost of production. When you've sat down as a farmer, done your maths properly, and you understand, well, this is how much it will cost me to produce, this is how much I can sell to make profit, and then with that, it becomes good for you, because once you have the papers and you understand your minimum cost of production, now you throw yourself into the race for bidding. And no, for bidding, you want to, most of the companies, or rather most of the tenders, will go for the cheapest supplier, right? Or rather one who has the most favorable prices. And so even as you compete to have the lowest price in the bidding, or rather one of the most competitive prices in the bidding, ensure that you do not go at a loss. Ensure that you have met your minimum cost of production, right? And you have made your profit very clear right there, to ensure that you can take care of your bills, you can repay the loans if you had loans, you can pay for the inputs in case there are inputs you took on credit. It's very important that you do your maths correctly, such that you will give a very competitive optimum value when it comes to the tender, such that these people will look at your price and they will be enticed. Well, on the other end, as much as they're being enticed on your end as a farmer, or rather as the end user who is supplying this agricultural produce, it ensures that you also do not go at a loss. And finally, now when it comes to you have done all these things, right? You have everything it takes for you to apply for a tender. We have talked about the whole issue of how you need to do, what you need to have in mind. You need to register your farm as a produce, just to list the things that you've mentioned. List your farm as a business, list your farm as a produce, as a business, register it, have that certificate. Register with the tax people, the Kenya Revenue Authority. In this case, if you're doing business in Kenya, register with the Kenya Revenue Authority. Ensure that you have a tax, you have a KRA pin, as well as a tax compliance certificate. That is very important. It's also very important that you also look for a business permit where it's needed. Most of these tenders will be very specific in matters document that they want to, and that is what I want us to look into right now. We're going to be delving into some samples of these documents, looking at what do these documents, what do these tenders look for. We'll be venturing into two sample tenders that have been out there. We can see what they want, what they need, what are the requirements, what is their language. And so once you have the three documents, it's very important that if they need you to be a member of any organization, for example, ensure that you find one. If they need you to be a member of a SACCO, even as they give out the publication, you can also ensure that you fit one. And if you do not want, ensure that you apply tenders that fit you, and tenders whose supply you can meet, The more comfortable you are in terms of meeting these supplies, the higher the possibility of you qualifying for that tender, because again, these companies are looking for stability, and stability can be felt from afar. They want consistency, they want assurance, they want security. In the same way you are counting on them, that they are an institution that has a reputation to protect, the same way you're counting on that as security, the same way they need to trust you as a person. They need to, be in a position where they can believe you and believe in your ability to deliver the produce that they want, be it beans, be it be it maize, be it vegetable, be it meat, or whatever farm produce that you have been tasked with the role of producing. And so we have mentioned about all these things. Yeah, you might also have a proposal that breaks down the pricing. You might think of that as well. Yeah, so that you might include the transport. Just to give a brief breakdown of the finances, that when these people are settling down on your cost, your cost, your cost might be higher than other bidders. It might be averagely higher than other bidders, but if you can give a slight breakdown, that will be very helpful and might give you a slightly an edge over your competitors, because you can cater for the transport. You can indicate whether you're catering for the transport. It's very important to indicate whether you're catering for the packaging and everything, or repackaging. If there's freezing or something, indicate all that, such that these people, when they're giving the tender, they'll be looking at yours and looking at the price that you're offering, and again, with a good breakdown right there, it becomes easier for them to identify that, yeah, sure, we can settle on this one because they seem to be well organized. And now, something that you also want to ensure, even as you fill in the tender papers properly, is ensure that you apply the tenders on time. Because most tenders run, you be given a tender that goes for maybe an year or 6 months or 2 years or 3 years, but averagely between 2 and 3 years, that is how long these tenders last. And so what you want to ensure is that, one, you can supply for that period, right? And so once you're sure about that, immediately you see a tender, apply in time, because most of these tenders are kicked out because a large number of people come to apply for these tenders, and so those that come late are not even considered, and those that make mistakes find themselves out. Those who quote too high find themselves out. And so you want to ensure that you are strategically positioned, you play safe when it comes to applying. You tick all their boxes, fill all the forms correctly, give an optimal value when it comes to the pricing. Be safe, and that ensures it puts you in a strategic position. And contrary to the opinion, or rather belief, that is out there, that these tenders are very corrupt, not all these tenders are corrupt. We have a good number of tenders that see transparency through them, and it is very possible for yourself to win yourself one of these tenders. And I had promised you we are going to be looking at at least two, or rather let's see what time allows, but we'll be looking at these tenders and looking at what do they need when they say they are advertising for this tender. What do they have in mind? What are they asking? What are the requirements? That is very essential. And so we'll be going through the document, but we'll be not exactly mentioning what exactly the institution is. For example, this one, one of these ones here is an institution that requires the supply of agricultural inputs, and just to look at it, eligibility of tenders. Yes, now here comes the eligibility of tenders. As we were talking about, now here are instruction to tenderers. We've talked about how to ensure that you can find a tender. We've talked about how you can register your business, but now here comes the instruction to tenderers, not from me, not from a farmers media, but from the tenderers themselves. Those people who are issuing these tenders, they normally give instruction to tenderers. And so this is something that you would want to hear, something that you don't want to miss out on. And one of them, that number one, is this invitation for tenders is open to tenderers eligible, right? And successful tenderers shall be notified the date of commencement, through specified in the tender documents. Yeah, this is just one of them. Let's go through them. the first thing they're looking at is the employees, committee members, board members, and their relatives, that is spouse and children, are not eligible to participate in the tender pursuant section 55(2) of the Act of 2015. So you see, this is very clear. In as much as we might mention, any other thing that comes in between when it comes to tendering process, one of the things that is stipulated clearly here is that, the employees of this organization or institution that is asking for this, that is giving this tender, the employees, its committee members, board members of that institution, and their relatives, that includes siblings, that includes spouse and children. Spouse and children, to be precise, are not eligible to participate in the tender, pursuant to the Act of 2015, that is section 55(2). This is just to ensure that the process is fair, is done fairly. And there is also something here which says tenderers shall provide the qualification information statement that the tenderer is not associated or have been associated in the past directly or indirectly with a firm, that has engaged with consulting services in preparation for the design. This is just too much English, but what we mean in short here is to ensure that the person who is applying for this tender has not been involved in the process of preparation of the tender, right? So you see how fair this can be. One, they are not relatives in any way, they are not directly associated or indirectly associated. Two, they are not involved. This ensures that they are not, the person being given this tender is not involved in any way in the process of preparing this tender, directly or indirectly. So that ensures that that shows you that it's possible that you as a farmer right out there, without knowing anybody, you have a chance of of winning a tender here or there. And something else that they have really highlighted at number 3 is tenderers involved in the corrupt or fraudulent practices or debarred from participating in public procurement shall not be eligible. Now here comes the importance of your tax clearance certificate. Something else that they might be looking at. They might be looking at a good conduct, for the business parties that are involved right here. And so that is one of the things that they've put right here. So ensure that you have your record clean, ensure that you are not involved, in corruption and fraudulent practices, so that you are not banned from the public procurement process. And you want to be in good books with these people, because these are the people who are in charge of all the procurement, and this, by procurement, we mean by all the tendering processes. Something here, we are going through this tender requirement for this specific one here, for the supply of this produce. They're saying the tenderer must bear all costs associated with the preparation and submission of this tender, and the organization will not be liable for those costs. So you see, this is the 1,000 Kenyan shillings I was telling you about there area loan that you need to part with. It's non-refundable, so that will cater for the printing of the document, preparation, and for everything. And so you need to it will be on your end. It's non-refundable, 1,000 to 2,000, but I think most companies just range between around 1,000 Kenyan shillings if you need to get a tender. And something else that something else that they give together with these is together with the tender, the tender document we are talking about here, the one that you're paying for 1,000, is instruction to tenderers, one that I'm sampling here for you. There's also general condition of the contract. The details of the contract are well indicated inside the tender document that you will be given. There are also special conditions of the contract. What duration, amounts in the value in which, the form in which you're paying, they will pay you. You have to agree properly, and it's included in the tender form. You also have a schedule of requirements. Probably they need you to do this by at least first supply a kg, or at least by second show us that you should give proof that you've planted, or rather etc., etc. but the schedule of requirements. There's also a detail of goods, detail of what exactly you're supposed to supply is inside that tender document. We also have a form of tender, the one that you're supposed to sign, indicating your experience, or rather you ascertaining, or rather confirming that indeed you confer your consent that you will be supplying that tender. We also have price schedules. So you need to give a price, and as we said, when giving the price, you have considered yourself. You've ensured that you are not suffering in the long run. There's also a contract form for yourself, where you'll have to sign a contract that you will supply the tender. There's also a confidential business questionnaire form. This is for this specific institution. They needed to give a confidential questionnaire for the businesses and those applying for the tender. There's also a tender security form that you might need to sign, and also there's also a performance security form. This ensures that you will supply. You have taken the tender. This ensures the security supply. The security performance form is to ensure that you will indeed supply the tender. And so there's also a declaration form right here, and there's also a request for review form. Essentially, that is the list of things that you will be needed to have, or rather have in your possession when you are applying for this tender. Very crucial that you have those documents coming part of the tender. We've talked about the cost that you're going to incur when it comes to the printing of the tender document. This is the tender document, and these documents that I've mentioned right here are what you need to come with you when it comes to the application of the tender. Well, assuming the registration and the other certificates are a constant, right? So we will be headed for another commercial break before we come back to conclude this conversation on tendering, and even as we continue to go through these sample tenders that are out here, such that by the end of this conversation, in case you are thinking of joining the business of tendering as a form of selling or rather marketing your farm produce, at least you'll have grasped the basics of it. I know it's not a topic we can conclude in one sitting. We cannot conclude it in one sitting. It needs to dig deeper into it, and this is a topic that we cannot exhaust today. We will have it another day. We will call in expert. We will call in all these committee members who deal with the tendering board, the tendering committee. We'll have them on board even as we have this discussion in depth further. But for now, we're headed for this commercial break. Don't go far. We'll be back in a jiffy. We'll be back in a very short while.
Spinach is a dark leafy vegetable that originated in Persia. Spinach is a superfood as it is loaded with tons of nutrients in a low-calorie package. Spinach has been used by various cultures throughout the history. Spinach is a versatile vegetable and can be eaten raw or cooked. It can be incorporated quite easily in any diet as it is cheap and easy to prepare.
just checking traffic updates here, and I'm seeing that Mombasa Road, the lorry that was causing traffic right there has been removed from the road. The process is ongoing, and although traffic is still intact on that road, and it's worse at the JKIA intersect outbound. Things are worse there, but I think things will be better in a few minutes, because that lorry that was causing traffic, that had experienced an accident even as we were beginning the show, is being removed right now even as we speak. So if you're using Mombasa Road, I think that will be clear after a few minutes. At least things should be better off. Welcome back. In case you're joining us right now, this is Farm Drive with me, David Kagina, and we are having a very interesting conversation. It matters tendering for farm produce. You know, we have identified that most institutions are a target for the farmer in terms when you're producing when you're working on your farm produce, and being the main form of purchase for them comes in forms of tendering, where they give you a tender to constantly supply. And we have looked at the things that you need. We were just right before the break, we were just sampling some of these institutions, and we have checked some of the requirements that they need. For example, we have looked at this institution that has been very specific in matters, the documents that they need, they have specified, and we were saying that they have given the qualifications that they need. Among the things that we have really established is, despite the myth, okay, it's not exactly a myth because in some places it applies, but a majority, contrary to the myth that all of the government tenders are corrupt, there's a very huge majority of these tenders that are not corrupt. Also in the private sector, there are very many people that do these tenders in a manner that is not corrupt, and I'll explain to you why. Because one, you have seen among the requirements of this tender process is one of them we've said is that more as we've seen from one of these companies that was issuing these tenders, is that one needs not to be associated in any way with the company, the board members or the committee members, directly or indirectly. They've also indicated that one needs to be free, yani you're not supposed to be directly linked with this institution in the process of preparing this tender. You're not supposed to be linked in any way in the process of preparing this tender. That means those being exposed to the tender are people who have come afresh, totally fresh people, people who have a clean record, because essentially we will be looking at the second tender, which is quite more precise in matters requirements as to what they want precisely. And we've also mentioned, the details that are contained in this tender form, the ones that we were talking about. Mostly, it's you who is seeking to apply the tender who caters for these charges. We've said they range between 1,000 and 2,000 Kenyan shillings, and normally it's a non-refundable fee because it's you as the one who is applying for the tender that is catering for this product, for these documents. And among the documents we've seen, there's instruction to tenderers, general conditions of contract, special conditions of the contract, the scheduled requirement for the tender. There's also detail of goods that you are supposed to supply. There's the form of the tender. We also have the price schedules. We also have the contract form between you and the institution. We also have the confidential business questionnaire form. This was specific to this institution. There's also the tender security form. We also have a performance security form, a declaration form, and a request for review form. All these details are among the documents that you'll have downloaded in what we have just called the tender form. In short, because the company wants to know who are we interacting with. They really need to get the details of you properly. And before we even get to the details of this one, let's check the requirements for these ones. For example, this one right here, the one that I'm having here is a provision of appendix, instruction to tenderers. So for this particular tender, those under the category of eligible tenderers, these were Kenyan registered firms, right? Remember, Kenyan registered firms, this means you have registered as a company in Kenya, as a partnership or a limited company in Kenya, right? So that is one of the eligibilities you have qualified. Next instruction, tender currency. So for this one, they are saying that the prices shall be quoted in Kenyan shillings, right? And also tenderer eligibility and qualification. Here they are saying the tenderer shall furnish the procuring entity, that is the institution, with documentary evidence of financial and technical capabilities necessary to perform the contract. When we're talking of these documents, we're talking about either your bank statement, M-Pesa statement, or SACCO or company financial statement, or rather your books showing your cash flow. These are some of the things, just to establish trust, to show that to ensure that they are giving the person who can be able to afford to truly supply this tender. There's a tender security right here. The security for this one is 30,000 Kenyan shillings in form of a bank guarantee and in the format provided in the tender document. That is right here. Validity of tender for this specific tender that I'm reading for you is 120 days, and also there's a number of tender copies required. Here they need one tender and a replica that is for yourself. There's also there's a slot where you need to clearly indicate the date, time, and indicator date and time for the tender notice. There's also where they're saying you should deliver. Where should you deliver the tender? Here, this was it's a school's tender, and so they're being delivered at the principal's office, and that is just the requirements for this tender. And among the things that have been evaluated, evaluation criteria for this one specifically for food in this school was mandatory tender requirements. These are those that we've mentioned before, you registering the certificate, necessary certification, evidence of your ability to supply, and that is 1A. They've said mandatory tender requirements. Those I believe now you know what we are referring to when we say that. There's also technical capability assessment. That includes due diligence where applicable. Here they'll check, do you have this farm, can you supply, are you existing, is your business real? These are due diligence. Now this is on the end of the institution. They'll also do a financial evaluation, that is to check your capability to deliver. That is where we talked about the bank statements and M-Pesa statement, or rather your cash flow statement. There's also due diligence. This is on the bit of the institution. And now to the specific data that you need, specifics, right? The specifics. Now going down to the specifics. This one specifically have asked for a certificate of incorporation or registration, right? At the beginning we said it's important that you register your firm as a business. Now this is the certificate they're asking for. They need also a valid tax compliance certificate. So this is clearance from the Kenya Revenue Authority, right? They also need a duly filled confidential business questionnaire. These ones they are providing. This is among those documents you find in the tender. They also need an original copy of tender security, of the security that they requested for earlier. That was 30,000 for this case. Letters of recommendation, LPOs, and contracts from at least 3 corporate clients. These ones they needed someone who has supplied before. That was one of the qualifications for this one, and so they needed 3 evidence of at least 3 previous supplies, indicating amount of goods, amount, contact person, date, telephone number, and email institution, in case they need to refer to know, in case you failed to supply, this is where now they verify. In case you supplied properly, this will serve as a recommendation for you, and you will have a heads up. And of course, this conversation we are having for someone who has not done it before. So once you do it the first time, the second time, these are some of the things that they'll be looking for. Also, you remember you registered your company as a partnership or a limited company. What they will be needing is the copies of their identification cards, national identification cards, or passports for the directors. Just for accountability, to ensure they can trace you once you have committed. And there's also attach a commitment letter for approval. Yes, you need to commit yourself that you will indeed meet the qualifications of this tender that is being required right here. And there's also serialization of the tender documents, right? So this means all the documents that you have pages, and so that has to be ensured that it is in place. There's also a technical bit of it, right? A technical bit in terms of what will give you the scores, what they will be looking at. For this one, the technical criteria for this one, they were looking at a state credit period, at least minimum proposal is 30 days for this one. Yeah, state price variety of bids. Yeah, the price you are offering. Provide a letter of reference from the bank. Now the bank is to assure them that indeed you are financially capable of handling this tender. You are also told here to attach a company profile detailing the background information, the company mission, vision, statement, enumerating the products and services provided. This is also very important. When we talked about ensuring that your company is registered as a business, that does not end at that. You need to ensure also that your company is you prepare something good about your company profile. Prepare a business profile for your company, highlighting the company mission, highlighting the vision, highlighting the product and products that you offer even as a company. Something else they're looking for here is a letter of commitment, confirming the duration when you will deliver. All this for accountability. And yeah, that's just it for this first contract that we're looking at, the first tender that we're looking at. Probably to have a look at the second tender. This one was a bit straightforward, a little bit straightforward. Mandatory requirements, they say, and among the things that are listed right here is the company profile. You see again the company profile pops up again. So it does not end at registering a business. It does not end at you having registered as a partnership or a limited company. It's very important for you to have the company profile, because for this one specifically, they needed the organizational structure, director, the hierarchy, who reports to who answers to who. They want to understand properly how your company runs, and that is one of the things they need. And also they need they're ensuring that you are associated with relevant bodies. If it's agriculture, they need to ensure that your produce are fit enough. And here they're asking for a certificate of incorporation. Remember, we told you to register your company. They need the certificate of incorporation besides you having a company profile. Also here they need copies of the KRA PIN, a business permit, and a current tax compliance certificate. So you see, it's very important that you need the good books with the taxman. They also something else here is you need to be you have to be in business for a period of at least exceeding 5 years. At least you do not want to apply for a tender and you're planting potatoes today. At least you need to have practiced before, at least either you have been in the business of tendering before, 1, 2, you can be in the business of supplying this specific product. If it's growing, at least you're not experimenting with the tender produce, right? If they want vegetables from you, they do not want you to come and experiment with their produce. So that's why they're asking for a qualification of at least you need to have been in the business of supplying this, or rather growing this particular produce, for 5 years. And this is precise for this one. This qualification varies. Some is 2 years, some is 1 year. We have the government ones, the AGPO ones for the youth and targeting youth and women that do not exactly need you to have previous experience. And something lastly here they need is a recommendation from at least 3 clients. Yeah, and so for them here, they need a recommendation for at least 3 clients who can confirm that for sure indeed you can supply. This could be clients that you sold that were not tenders. Could be somewhere you are supposed to deliver and you delivered faithfully, good product and in good time, and those recommendations will really come in handy. And so just to wrap up the whole conversation, to bring up, just to summarize what we have been speaking about today, we have been speaking about the whole conversation of tendering for farm produce, and we have established that, one, you need to register your company as a business, as a company, and we have said the most preferred is as a partnership or as a limited company. We have also agreed now, looking at the qualifications from these previous tenders, what they were asking for is you need to prepare a business profile for yourself. Yes, ensure you have your vision, mission, company structure right there with you, Gangari, so that in case they ask for it, you just produce it. Something else that we're looking at is we are saying you need to be in the good books with the taxman. That means the tax compliance certificate from KRA that needs to be very validated. You also need a business permit, because these institutions do not want to interact with someone that is not allowed to have to conduct business correctly. And you need also to be legally registered. That means that you need to be permitted to conduct business within the country, and specifically in Kenya for this one. And if it's another country, conduct business, you need to be verified to conduct business in that country. And something else is duration. You need to be very clear and categorical in the duration. For how long have you been farming? For how long have you been producing the product that you want to supply, right? So for this one will get the farmers who have quite some experience. If you have 1 year, 2 year, 3 years or so, or several seasons of farming, probably you have 2 years, but you have done a crop that requires 3 months to mature, and you have done it consistently throughout the 2 years. And so that it's very important that you keep record of how long you have been supplying. And also lastly, something that comes very crucially, we have said, is you need to have to maintain a good relationship, in case you win a tender, in case you have a tender here, in case there's a need for you to supply. It's very important that you become very categorical and intentional in the relationship that you create with these people, because if you supply once, there's a very high chance that the next time you will stand above your competitors, because people love you and I love things that we know. We say better the devil you know than the angel that you do not know. And so this is the same will apply with these tendering committees. They will want to work with a company they have worked with before, and so it's important that you ensure you maintain a good relationship. And not just for them, you might not want to work with them before, but you have seen, it's very clear from the two tender notices that we have looked at before, for both institutions, it was mandatory for you to have at least 3 recommendation letters. And so this is important for you to ensure that for the companies that you interact with, for the suppliers that you interact with, at least maintain a good relationship, supply as you're supposed to supply, such that these people will confidently give you a recommendation letter should you need, or rather, and also in case you have other LPOs, in case you are supplying for the government, initially ensure that you have this in play. The contracts for your previous supplies, ensure that you have this in play, because this will ensure that they give you an upper hand. People want someone who has worked with other people before. Even if, assuming it was you and you have a surgeon on you, you wouldn't want a surgeon who has done nothing about surgery before, and you are the first actual person they are laying their hands on. You need someone who have experience, someone who has tried it out before in their training school, on cadavers before, someone who has gained experience, someone who understands. And so the same applies when it comes to tendering. They do not want to give it to someone who has never done anything matters tendering before, and that is why you need to build yourself even as and position yourself strategically. And sometimes do not ignore your period. It's important that you understand and equip yourself properly, package yourself properly out there as a product, or rather as a company, it's very important that you package yourself properly. Probably you have done it on quarter an acre, probably you grew, you developed to half an acre, grew it to 1 acre, developed it to around 10 acres. It's very important that you state that categorically, and it's important that you learn to package that properly, especially when you are applying for these tenders. And despite the myth that these things are corrupt, all of them, all tenders are corrupt, there's ignore the myth, right? There's also there is a high chance that you can score yourself a beautiful tender, and we've seen it's not exactly corruption. Sometimes someone before you supplied, and they supplied well, and so if they applied for the same tender, there's a very high chance they would be picked because they met the requirements of the institution well, not unless the institution has a policy where they do not pick from the same tenderer for a certain period. But for as long as it's open, it becomes easier for you. Once you establish a relationship with an institution, say your local primary school, or your local secondary school, or an institute or a prison close to you, it becomes very easier for you to supply. Be it maize millers, and you have established, you supplied the first time and you supplied well, it becomes easier for you to do the second and third and fourth and consecutive tenders. So that's all we had. When it comes to this conversation, when we're talking about tendering for farm produce, remember, it's very possible for you to win these tenders. You just need to have the necessary requirements and fill in these documents clearly, have the necessary documents in terms of financial statements that will show you good financial records. Also ensure that you do good bookkeeping, because as you see, your cash book, or rather what evidence of cash flow, might come in very essentially when it comes to supplying a tender. And also ensure, even as you give your pricing, you give up competitive price, yes, on one hand, but ensure that on the other end you do not suffer as a farmer. You already have done your maths properly, you understand your cost of production, such that you will not go at a loss even as you strive or delve to supply this tender. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for those who sent their feedback. There's a post we have put up on social media. I see there's those who tuned in. There's Abubakar Aliyu, who has been tuned in all along. There's Mary, there's Rose right there. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much. Let's meet tomorrow, same time, right? 4 to 6 p.m. and we'll be discussing something different. We'll be looking at now value addition. Tomorrow being a Friday, we'll be looking at value addition. Remember, right here on Farm Drive, we look at what you do after your product is ready. Now, what do you do? Where do you take it? Now, today we looked at the markets. Now, tomorrow we go back to value addition. We'll be looking at how do you add value to this and this product. And remember, here we ensure that you get informed so that you can connect, you learn, you grow, so that you can connect more and grow financially. And even as you learn more, learning does not end. We learn every day. So I believe you scooped something. I believe you had a point that you could take home from this conversation. Till tomorrow, enjoy your evening and enjoy your farming. Your health is the farm's health.